Okay, so hi everyone. Today's our last day. Really sad about this, but it's okay because these calls will be on YouTube. So just think of it as the live deal. And obviously, if your friends or anyone missed this, you guys can find it on our YouTube channel. It's linked in our link tree, and if you go follow us on Instagram at medical.wonders, there's actually a post and our link tree linked in the bio itself, so you guys can find our YouTube and find these calls and the rest of the calls kind of on there as well. So I'm just gonna take this share the screen again. If you've seen this for the 50th time, I'm really sorry, but I have to just kind of introduce myself and stuff. Okay, so hi everyone, welcome to Medicine Week 2020. So we're actually this is going to be our last week. We're not having any more calls after this. However, we are going to make it an annual thing. So either around this time in August or in June or July, we are going to redo this with different panelists and different speakers. So I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Sonia, and I'm a high school senior from New Jersey. I love to run, and I also play the violin, and I'm obviously the founder of Medical Wonders. And these are kind of a few of my leadership activities. And I have over 300 plus hours in community service, hospital, volunteering, tutoring. So if you guys need any help and you're a high school kid that wants to kind of volunteer or shadow at a pediatrician, you guys are welcome to ask me or DM me at medical.wonders. And you could find me at those two ads down below. So, what is Medical Wonders itself? So, it's a student-led and student nonprofit organization to educate and advise students about the astounding medical procedures, careers, devices, and more. So, we actually have a lot of different committees and stuff. So, we have 4 executive teams. We have 50 tutors and 10 college overseers. And we have 200 plus general members aside from the people that are in our other teams. And we also have a pre-medical medicine panel, which has 15 motivated undergraduate students that are pursuing either pre-PA, pre-vet, or pre-medicine tracks. And they were actually on one of our calls, the 3 of them. So if you want to kind of see that, they're also uploaded on our YouTube channel. So here are more of our stats. We have about 200 plus people involved. We've reached many of the nonprofits and collabed with them, which can be found on our Instagram. And we have about 3.5K followers. Thank you guys for that so much. So what's Medicine Week? So every day this week, now it's ending, a medical professional or student will go on Zoom with us for an hour presentation and an optional case study and a Q&A session. If you guys were here yesterday, Dr. Shah took over and he actually guided us through a pretty cool case. So we're going to upload that later on today. So if you missed the case study or anything or what he has to say about being a doctor, you guys can check that out. So our panel board, I couldn't link everyone here, but as you guys know, today is our last day. And if you want more full descriptions on each doctor or student, you can go at medical.wonders. So how are you getting your certified hours? So if you guys weren't here yesterday, there were actually a few more extra announcements that I wanted to kind of bring up. So all the calls are now uploaded on our YouTube channel. There's a high demand because a lot of people missed out, whether it was school or prior commitments. And our summaries are due September 4th, 11:59 p.m. and at once. It's just easier for me to kind of keep track of everything and kind of put an end to this medicine week, as over 200 people actually are going to be doing these shadowing hours and getting certificates. So in order to obviously verify your attendance, you must submit a 5 to 6 paragraph of what the calls talked about. So please submit it all at once, so either today or tomorrow after you watch all of the videos. And just email it at medical.wonders with 2 S's at gmail.com. So they must be in detail and they must be 1 paragraph per call. So if you attended all 7 calls, you're going to be doing 7 paragraphs. And these paragraphs, as well as attending or kind of watching it on YouTube, will have 2 hours per call. So if you attended all 7 calls, you will get 14 hours worth of shadowing experience. There's a correction here, so don't worry about that much. And here's kind of how to list it on resume and application. So these are the 2 bullets. And make sure you put your full name along with the paragraph as well. So now I'm going to start sharing, and I'm kind of going to give it over to our guest here, our last guest. So if you want to just introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everybody. Hold on, there's someone in the waiting room.
Yeah, I admitted
Okay.
them. Don't worry about it now.
Yeah, hi everyone. I hope you guys are all doing well. For those of you who might not know me, my name is Samantha. I'm going to be a first-year PA student at Charles Drew University in Southern California. I start on Monday, so we have a meeting in about an hour's time, and so I'm really excited to kind of be a part of this. I think it's really awesome and just shed some light on the pre-PA world and the PA profession and kind of help you guys navigate this entire process because it's daunting and it's involved. So a little bit about me, I guess. I'm from New York originally. I'm from Buffalo. I moved to California in 2014, and I attended Cal State Long Beach. In undergrad, I majored in exercise science, kinesiology, and I applied to PA school through the CASPA portal for the first time in 2019. I applied to 7 schools in total. I got 6 interviews. I only went to 4 of them. And I got into a few schools, got waitlisted to some others, and I decided ultimately to attend Charles Drew University in SoCal. So I guess, where should I start? Oh, thank you. Thank you for the luck. I guess to start off, there's quite a few things that are involved with the pre-PA world. I don't know. Let's see, I have some questions here. So I guess I'll start with the patient care experience because that's kind of the one that most people have a lot of questions about, which patient care experience is the best to kind of go for, what will allow you the most exposure to the medical field, where will you learn the most, and this really does depend on how much time you have as well as where your interests lie. So I was a CNA for a couple of years, and that involved getting certified to be a CNA, which takes time and it takes money. And so it took about 6 weeks to get certified for a CNA position. And that is humbling work. I think that is probably where I learned that I can get down and dirty with, the job itself, because you're working one-on-one with people, helping them with their activities of daily living. You're helping them shower, you're helping them clean themselves up, you're helping them ambulate, you're helping them transport. You're really their extension of care. Like, they can't do things on their own, and so you have to be comfortable having that physical contact, having that experience in that way, where you're really responsible for them, their safety, their health, their hygiene, all of that. So that's my first experience. I also worked as a medical assistant, and I got certified in that as well. So that's another round of certifications. That took about 3 months. And I worked as an MA in Mexico, volunteering in a community that really lacked medical care. And these people had no access whatsoever. They lived in a very remote part of Mexico. And we had people that took a bus for about 8 hours to get to us. And so when they get to you, they're incredibly grateful. They can't even get their hypertension medications or their diabetes medications. The very, very things that we take for granted in the US, they have no access to whatsoever. And so that was humbling in its own way. And it really showed me the need for medical care overseas and really disenfranchised communities. So that was my second experience. I did that for about a year and a half. And then my final experience before applying to PA school was in the emergency department. I worked as an ED scribe, and that was not hands-on, but that was where I learned a lot as far as medical decision-making, how to write a history of present illness or an HPI, how to write a medical chart, how to really be part of the medical team and be a linchpin for the medical provider. Because if you're there and you're a scribe and they're entrusting you to not only be accurate with your documentation, but they rely on you so that they can see more patients in the ED. And so you see a lot in the emergency department. I have some really crazy stories. And my husband's actually an ED doctor as well. And so we kind of, it's a crazy world, and emergency medicine is really interesting. So if you guys have interest in that, then I can shed a little bit of light as to what I saw was exposed to and what life in the ED is actually like. So yeah, so those are the patient care experience hours that I had. Other questions that I get involve volunteering and what volunteering I did prior to applying to PA school. And I volunteered in Mexico, as I mentioned, but I also, as far as what makes you unique, because a lot of people struggle with this as far as if they should focus solely on volunteering in the medical world or volunteering in other aspects of their community. And my main tip for this is just volunteer where you feel drawn to. So for me, I think the most unique thing that I did volunteering wise was volunteering with individuals with disabilities at a fitness studio. So since I majored in kinesiology, that has an emphasis on exercise. And so that is where I really gravitated as far as what interested me, what I wanted to do outside of my extracurriculars. How can I get the community moving and involved and increase their quality of life in a very practical and applicable way? And so I got involved with volunteering at a fitness studio where they was one of two places that had individuals with disabilities working out and having access to those resources. And so that was something that I was asked in a lot of my PA school interviews, and I think really helped me stand out in a different way, I guess. So yeah, so as far as volunteering, just volunteer where you feel like the most interested. If it's showing children how to play music or something of that nature, go for that. Other things that I did volunteering wise was volunteering in Mexico, as I mentioned. I also volunteered at pre-PA conferences in Southern California as well, and just immersed myself in the PA profession as much as possible at the undergraduate level. So getting involved with the AAPA membership, getting involved with your state's PA organization, whatever that may be. For me, it was CAPA, CAPA. So getting involved with that and just showing that you're interested and intent on getting involved with a profession at the level of which you're capable of doing so, which is generally speaking the undergraduate level. So yeah, so I'm trying to think of what else I recommend. Do you guys have any questions? Because I kind of want this to be more collaborative versus me just talking at you guys. And there's a lot to the pre-PA world, so I kind of want to help as much as possible in the amount of time we have.
Okay, so I'm just gonna open kind of the chat up, so you guys can kind of go more in depth to it. She kind of just gave a general introduction about it. So if you guys have any more further questions about kind of her experiences and stuff like that. But I know one question while we're waiting for everyone. Someone asked, what can I expect in an interview for PA school and how do I prepare?
Yeah, so it really depends. I can't speak to the virtual setting too much, but generally speaking, there's quite a few different types of interview formats. And I have a YouTube channel where I go into depth about all of these different topics. So if you guys have an interest in that, then we can connect you to that, because I go into depth about this a lot more. But as far as interviews go, generally speaking, you want to treat them as if you're having a coffee talk with somebody. The idea of them is to be very laid back, but of course you're going to be incredibly nervous. It's going to be the most nerve-wracking moment of your life, generally speaking. But there's lots of different formats. Some of them are what's called MMI, where you're just, and medical school has this as well, where you just knock on a door, you're presented a question and you have 6 minutes to provide an answer before you go into the next room, and you get no feedback. It's not very conversational whatsoever. You're kind of put on the spot, and hope that you don't say the wrong thing and you move on to the next room. So that's one type of interview, and can be daunting. I thought it was kind of fun, but most people are a little bit intimidated by that format. Other formats involve one-on-one interviews where, like I said, it's much more conversational, much more like a coffee talk where the person's just trying to get to know you. And some schools have two of these where you're talking to two different people at different times. Some schools have it where you're talking to two people at once. But all the questions revolve around very similar sentiments, whereby, why do you want to be a PA? What do you know about the PA profession? And then they ask questions where they're trying to get a sense of your character. So whether it be, name a time where you've had conflict with somebody and how did you resolve that? Or, name, I don't know, name a time where you realized that you were at fault for something. Other questions which I find more interesting involve ethical or moral dilemmas. So what would you do if you saw a classmate of yours drinking heavily during clinical year? How would you approach that situation? Or what would you do if you have a patient who doesn't want to undergo a blood transfusion? How do you approach them? Things of that nature. So it really depends on which type of interview style you're talking about. But generally speaking, you want to kind of get used to answering questions out loud when you're preparing for interviews. You want to get used to talking about the typical PA or med school questions. Why doctor? Why PA? What do you know about the profession? How can you improve the profession? What drawbacks do you think are involved with the profession? And then you want to get into the ethical scenarios, the situational scenarios, and kind of master those 3 things, I would say, altogether. But yeah, there's a lot that can be said for interviews, but that's kind of how you want to approach them.
All right.
Yes.
So you can kind of go through the comments and see which ones you want to answer.
Let's see. Let me scroll back up. Okay. So can you tell us more about scribing in the ED in your experience? So scribing in the ED in my experiences, I don't know which, because those are 2 different questions, but I guess, so scribing in the ED was probably my favorite favorite healthcare experience. And when you apply to PA school, they kind of divide patient care versus healthcare experience. The schools that I applied to, I contacted them directly and made sure that they included into the healthcare experience hours, because you need a certain amount of hours to apply to PA school. So scribing was my favorite one for the ones that they allowed for. So for patient care experience, that was my favorite exposure. And what I liked about it was that it was the first time where I sat side to side with a physician or a PA or what have you, and really collaborated with them. And I got to ask them questions about, what does this lab, and granted, the emergency department is crazy, so you might not always have the time, or the provider that you're working with may not want to talk to you. They might just want to do their job and go home, but some providers, you can really build a rapport with them. And if you have an interest and an eagerness to learn, they're going to teach you. They're going to have a very collaborative dynamic with you, and they're going to depend on you a lot. So if a lab report comes back and the doctor is doing 10 other things, you can say, hey, Dr. So-and-so, this is back. You might want to take a look. It doesn't look good or whatever, or you can say this imaging result, you said you wanted to order that image for this person. So you want to put the CT request in before you fall behind. So you kind of keep them on track and allow them to maintain proper flow of the emergency department. And they depend on you for that. And when you do that well, then they'll teach you things in return. So if you have a patient who comes in for X reason, and then they order something that you're like, that doesn't seem like it's indicated, but why did you order that? How does that tie in with their chief complaint or the reason why they're coming into the emergency department? And you'll have doctors who are very eager to teach. And so you learn so much. And I'm interested to see how what I've learned transitions over to PA school, because I imagine it's probably going to transition quite well. As far as what you see, you see a lot of different things. And so you have to have a strong stomach. You have to, if blood gets to you, then scribing might not be the thing for you. Or if everybody's sympathetic to an extent, but you have to learn compartmentalization skills, and you'll do so on the job in the emergency department. So we've had, you see really sad things like children who are diagnosed with cancer. You see, we had somebody come in one day and he was 14 years old and he was skateboarding and he got slammed by a semi, and he came in, and in the hospital that I worked at, we weren't a trauma center. And so this was very abnormal, but he came in, and so he had nowhere else to go because they didn't secure an airway in the field, which means the EMS, the people who picked him up in the van, couldn't secure his airway. So they had to bring him to the closest hospital possible to kind of secure an airway and get his care moving. So he came to us, and he was there for about 3 hours. We couldn't save him, unfortunately, and that was quite hard. Like, we had the helicopter come to pick him up to bring him to the USC, which is the best trauma center in SoCal, where we're located. And he ended up hemorrhaging on the helipad, and so they had to bring him back into our emergency department. And so it ended up being about 3 hours, but we ultimately couldn't save him. And it was hard because we had the entire emergency department closed off. Everybody was working towards saving this kid. And in that sense, it can be really difficult and heavy at the end of the day when we can't save him, and everybody feels that weight. But at the same time, as a scribe, you're a fly on the wall, and you see the entire medical staff coming together and just having one single focus: let's do what we can to save this kid. And it's in those moments where you realize, like, it's almost like this is where I'm supposed to be. And you don't have those exposures when you're a CNA or an MA, unfortunately. So as a scribe, you have moments where it's like this strange, it's almost like an existential, realization or appreciation for what medical providers and the medical team can do when they all come together. And I've seen cases like that. That one was the last one that I can remember that happened before I left this past summer. So that's the first one that comes to mind. But yeah, in the emergency department, you see all different shades of the human condition and people, and you're there for their most vulnerable moments. And so it's a privilege and it's an honor, and the job is difficult because it's very fast paced, but I would recommend it especially if you don't have time to get certified. Medical scribing is incredible. So yes. All right, next question. So why did I choose PA over any other medical profession? That's a great question. And that I do have a video on my YouTube channel regarding that as well, where I go into that in depth. But in a nutshell, PA is unique in that it does have what's called lateral mobility. And so you have the ability to shift specialties throughout the course of your career. And so for me personally, I didn't have one set specialty that I was gravitating towards. Some people have that, where they know they want to be a cardiologist and they've known that since they were 6 years old. For me, it wasn't like that. For me, it's a little bit more unique, whereby I prefer to bolster an area of medicine that is needing of that special assist, I guess. And so, for example, excuse me. So for example, with the medical field and the medical arena is always changing. And so needs always arise, and this changes year by year, decade by decade. And so you might have a period of time where there's an opioid epidemic and you need addiction specialists to come in and to assist patients who are struggling with things like addiction, alcoholism, things of that nature. Also with like the geriatric population, the baby boomers getting older, geriatric specialties are in need of physicians or providers or PAs or what have you to come in and to fill that need within the healthcare system. So for the role of PA, as I see it, it places me in the best position to really get in there and to help bring the medical system up and address issues as they arise. And so that's what drew me to the PA profession. It also encompasses all the aspects of medicine that I already love, like learning through the medical model, seeing patients, interpreting lab studies, diagnosing, prescribing medications, having a real active role in their care. So those were all things that I was interested in already. And then just immersing myself in the PA profession at the undergraduate level, like I mentioned. So going to conferences, being a part of my pre-PA club, joining the AAPA, really getting a sense for what PAs do and their role in the medical field really drew me into this profession. So that's in a nutshell why I chose it. But like I said, I have a video on my YouTube channel that kind of goes into this a little bit more. But yes. Um, so patient care experience and hospital-based experience. That's an interesting question. I don't know about hospital-based experience. So for when you're applying to PA school, it divides your experience into patient care, which is direct hands-on stuff. So like CNA, MA, things of that nature. And then healthcare experience, which is not hands-on. So that would be like your medical scribing, for example. Then there's other examples as well, but those are the ones that I'm familiar with. Hospital-based, I think what you may be asking is when you're working in a hospital versus not in a hospital. So like as a CNA, you can work in a hospital, but for me, I worked in things like long-term care. I worked with in things like acute skilled nursing facilities, and things like that. So I worked outpatient care, and there's benefits to that as well. So like working in a long-term care facility, I worked with patients who have dementia. And so that was a patient population that I probably wouldn't have gotten exposed to otherwise. And so I think there are benefits and drawbacks to both. I think a lot of people put emphasis on getting into the hospital and working in a hospital, and I think there are benefits to that, but I think that often it's overlooked working in things like skilled nursing or outpatient long-term care, things of that nature, where you're exposed to different demographics of the patient population. Hopefully that answers your question. Let's see, how did I know PA school was the right fit for me? I think, I don't know if you're talking about the PA profession or PA school versus medical school, or the specific PA school that I am going to. For the specific PA school that I'm going to, I knew it was the right fit for me because it had elements of the PA schools that I was looking for, like teaching under the modular system, where the systems are modular based. So when you're learning about cardiovascular system, that's what you're focused on. And so you focus on the medications involved with that, the anatomy, the physiology, and the particular pathologies that are involved with that particular system. I looked for a school that had a small class size because I didn't want to be overlooked or kind of in the back of the room or just a source of revenue for the program. I wanted them to invest in me as I was investing in them. I wanted a school that had a cadaver lab, and I wanted a school that had good integrity and had a similar disposition that I do when it comes to providing medical care. So I wanted a school that has humanism in the way that they see patients. I don't want them to treat the disease. I want them to treat the person, treat the patient and see them eye to eye and as an individual. I wanted them to have a diverse classroom and have an appreciation for diversity within their school system. So the school that I'm going to has a very diverse classroom. My classmates are all awesome. They all come from different places, have different stories, are incredible people. And I feel like I learn a lot because of that. And I wanted them to have a real involvement with the community. And you'll see that a lot of schools say that they have an involvement because they have to, or they'll put it in their mission statement. But I encourage each of you to really look at the school and see where it's located and see what community involvement programs they have in place and how true to their word they are. The school that I'm attending is located in a very disenfranchised community, and they are immersed in that community and they are invested in that community. And it's evident the moment you walk into that campus, the moment you speak with that faculty, their faculty or the students that go there. And I love that about CDU, about the program that I'm attending. So those are just some things that I was looking for. Let's see. So the PA timeline. This will vary for everyone. You have to have, generally speaking, you need an undergraduate degree, and it can be in anything. So it doesn't have to be in the sciences specifically. I encourage you to choose something that is interesting to you that you'll do well in, because you need a strong GPA in order to be admitted to a competitive program. You do need to take the prerequisites that are involved with whichever school is you're interested in attending. And you need patient care experience, volunteering, and all of that stuff. So you can do all of this while you're in undergrad. You just need to have really good time management skills. You probably won't be able to watch TV. You need to prioritize, but you can get it done in 4 years within the when you start undergrad. I would say I had a friend, who switched professions, and she was able to do she already had an undergrad degree, but she was able to get her patient care, her volunteering, all that stuff done within 2 years. But like I said, this looks different for everybody. It just depends on where you're starting from and how much you need to get done before you actually apply. How do I feel about gap years? I personally would encourage people to take a gap year if they have the opportunity to do so. Number one, you can get a lot done in your gap year. So if you're applying in spring, it's about a year long application process. And so if you graduate in spring like I did and you apply that same spring, then you have about a year's time to kind of take extra courses if you need to take extra courses for prerequisites for PA school you're applying to, but you also have time to travel. Hopefully COVID is over by the time you guys have a gap year, and so you're able to do that and just experience life before you go into your PI or med school studies. I think, yeah, I would encourage everyone to take a gap year, and you can get more patient care experience if you'd like, but I think traveling and getting immersed in different cultures will not only make you a stronger provider in the long term, but put things in perspective as well. Because when you're in school and you're doing the grind and you kind of like day in and day out, you're just working hard and trying to get, you know, that competitive applicant roster or whatever you want to call it, you lose sight of the bigger picture. And so just taking yourself out of that, I think, will help you go back and with stronger and with more conviction and yeah, I don't know. I am in favor of a gap year, but if you don't have time or if you prefer not to, then that's okay as well. Oh, taking the GRE tomorrow for PA school. Good luck. Any last minute tips or advice? Focus on what I recommend she focuses on what she's weakest in. So I'm assuming she's taken some preparatory tests at this point. Just take a look, see where you're weakest, and do a bunch of problems in your weakest area. I think a lot of people focus on their strengths, especially if they have the test the next day. They just redo things that they feel strong in so they feel confident. And there's, you know, I mean, if that's your approach, then that some people are successful in doing that, but I think focusing on your weakest points will help you kind of get those extra points on the GRE and help you long-term as well. Let's see, so the MA program that I did was associated with my university at Cal State Long Beach. I did CNA through the Red Cross, and I think they might do MA as well. I can't speak to that, but the MA program that I did was associated with my university. So I would recommend looking into the university that you might be attending and seeing if they have any affiliated programs with EMT or MA, because many do. So yes. Patient care hours did I accumulate? I don't know the exact number. I think it was about it was about 2,400, I think, in total. It was over 2,000, but it wasn't an insane amount. Some people apply with 5,000, 4,000 hours. No, if you get over 1,000, most schools will consider you in their applicant pool. Let's see. This is less of a pre-PA question and more of a general PA question, but can you talk about what opportunities are for PAs who work within the LGBTQ community? Ooh, that's a good question. So actually, I do know one PA who worked with the LGBTQ community. He was from New Jersey, and he worked in infectious diseases with an emphasis on HIV prevention and management for the LGBTQ community. And so that is the best one that I've heard of. I don't know of any other opportunities offhand, but there are certainly ways that you can create different opportunities within the profession on your own and then kind of be a trailblazer in that regard. But I think infectious disease management or testing, or even working in women's health, like I know Planned Parenthood, they have a lot of different things involving the LGBTQ community as far as testing or even transitioning genders or things of that nature, and helping guide people through those processes, which I think is really important and is an interesting field to get into as well. So those are two that come to mind. Do I need a certificate in something to get clinical experience? I'm a full-time student, so it's hard to add more classes. You absolutely don't. What I recommend doing if you don't have time to get a certification is looking for scribing opportunities like I mentioned. You don't have to scribe in the emergency department, but I think if you're a full-time student, what I liked about it is that the hours were incredibly flexible. So I could work on the weekends, I could work overnights, I can work second, third shift after a full day of classes. So your schedule will be demanding, but it's possible to accumulate hours as an ED scribe. But you can also work as a scribe in other settings as well. But you can also do MA if you know somebody. So if you have a family friend who's a doctor or a PA, or you know somebody who knows someone, I recommend reaching out to those people, because you don't necessarily need a certification to become a medical assistant. It's just preferred, generally speaking, but you can kind of find ways to get training on the job for that. Do you have to take physics for PA school? You do not. I took physics for my major, but I don't, and it helps with my science GPA. So if you do take it and you do well in it, then it'll boost your science GPA, but you don't need it for PA school. Just if you're interested in physics and you happen to perform well, it'll help boost your science CASPA GPA, which is always a good thing. So how did I balance working as a CNA and college? That's a good question. I mean, balancing any job when you're in college takes a little bit of finesse, I guess. I just prioritized. So I didn't cram for exams. I gave myself time to study for exams ahead of time. I think that was a huge thing that helped me, not only acutely like doing well in the test, but it helped me long-term as well, because I've retained a lot of that information that I learned in undergrad over time. And you will need a solid science foundation when you go into PA school, when you go into the higher sciences and things like that. So I think that was key. And then I just did a lot of stress reliever stuff, like working out in between long shifts or shift days and studies and things like that. Just doing things that kind of recharge you. So working out, meditating. I didn't watch TV. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I haven't watched TV in like a decade. I don't even know the last time, but you make sacrifices in some aspects of your life to kind of put that energy towards things that are productive and will help you long term. You can still maintain a social life, so I didn't have a hard time doing that. I think it's just prioritizing what's important and what will get you farther long term. And so I didn't find it difficult to balance my work with my academic/social life. But I think just having a schedule, don't cram for tests, and be like, have grace with yourself. Those are my tips for that. Would you suggest taking the PA CAT, which is the new test for PA students for applying to PA school? So I don't know how many schools actually require the new test for PA students. I would recommend looking at the schools you're interested in applying to and seeing if it's worthwhile to take another test. Because if you're already taking the GRE and you already have only so much time to do so, then it might not be worthwhile to take both. If it only means applying to one school when you're already applying to 12 or 13 programs, it might not actually make a huge difference as far as whether or not you'll be accepted to a program or not. So I think you have to kind of do an assessment as far as what the context of your situation is, and then see if it's worthwhile. I don't know that many schools actually require the PA CAT, so I would say, just off the top of my head, it's probably not worthwhile. But if 3 of the 8 programs that you are applying to do require it, then it would probably be something to look into. Okay, talk more about getting certified as an MA. So the MA certification that I went through was about 3 months long, and is pretty extensive. We learned quite a bit of hands-on skills, so venipuncture, how to take vitals, things like that. Things that I had done as a CNA, but it was a bit more broad and more involved as a medical assistant. So you do things like venipuncture, how to take blood glucose levels, how to read certain things. It's a lot of your clinical skills, but it also encompasses a lot of the medical terminology and situational awareness things that you might encounter when working at a clinic or things of that nature. It involved learning about cultural competency, what that entails. I do think it was worthwhile to take if you have the time and the money to do so. And yeah, so that's a little bit about the medical assistant certification.
So another question, I don't know if you skipped it, but do you have any research or lab experience and would you recommend it?
Ooh, I don't have an extensive amount of research or lab experience. Many PA programs don't look for that when they're looking at their PA applicants. If you have it and you're applying, like certain schools do have an emphasis on that. So that might be, if that's a school you're interested in, it might be something worth looking into, but many programs don't have a lot of emphasis on research and things of that nature. I think there's advantages of doing research. I tried to seek opportunities, but the university that I attended were very closed off. So you had to be pursuing a PhD in order to acquire research experience. So it would have been something that I would have done in addition to all the other things that I was doing if it was available, but only because it was interesting to me and it was something I wanted to get involved with. So if it's not something that you're drawn to, then you probably won't put forth an effort to do well in it, and then you also would have difficulty managing all of your other commitments. So it might not be worth seeking if you're not totally invested in it. But if you are invested and it's something that you're interested in pursuing, then I would definitely recommend doing it, because it would give you an advantage for certain programs, and it's also makes you more interesting and a more well-rounded applicant as well, but it's not required. Let's see. So this is an interesting question. Since doctors and PAs have similar duties and PAs have a greater focus on patient care, is the reason for you to choose to be a PA due to patient care and less of the bureaucratic work? How would you handle a patient who has terminal disease such as HIV but doesn't want to tell their partner? That's a good interview question. So those are good questions. So PAs do avoid a lot of the administrative work or bureaucratic work. They also get sued less, generally speaking, than doctors do, which are definite benefits of pursuing the PA route over doctor MD-DO route. It's not necessarily something that I avoided when choosing the PA profession. It's just a happenstance. It just happens to be one of those things. So I would say that wouldn't be a reason for me to choose to be a PA over an MD-DO. Although I will say my husband's a physician in emergency medicine, and I do see how he is gassed out due to the persistent administrative work or frustrations that are associated with his position. So yeah, and I couldn't tell if that would be something I would avoid completely as a PA in emergency medicine, but I do think that there is something there to that burnout rate that's associated with MDs, DOs versus PAs in settings such as emergency medicine and things of that nature. So the patient with the terminal disease, so that's an example of something that you might see in an interview. And so for questions like that, you want to, how I would approach this patient is I would ask them why they wouldn't want to tell their partner. Maybe they are of a generation like in the 80s where they thought that HIV was instantly a death sentence. Maybe they don't understand that it's pretty well managed now at this point. And it wouldn't reduce their quality of life. It just takes some management. Maybe they, sorry. Maybe they contracted HIV through a partner that was outside of their relationship, and so they're tentative on approaching their partner regarding the HIV diagnosis because of this reason. I would try and understand where they were coming from and why they have hesitations and see if we can work towards resolving those hesitations. Ultimately, because it is HIV, it's a public health issue, and so you would need to tell their partner or have them informed in one way or another so they can get tested and ensure the safety of that party as well. Even though patient confidentiality is important in this case, it's kind of compromised by that public health component as well. So those are the two things that you'd be grappling with in this question. but yeah, ultimately you would have to have their partner know in one way or another, and hope that it would be by your patient telling them themselves. Do I have shadowing hours? I do. I don't know how much exactly. I shadowed a PA in internal medicine over the course of about a year and a half. I shadowed a PA in emergency medicine and in an oncology, ENT oncology, which is really cool, and then ortho as well. But I didn't have 500 plus hours. I might have had probably about 250, 200 hours of shadowing. For that, I recommend, because it's difficult to get shadowing hours, I would recommend getting shadowing in multiple different specialties if you can do it, versus getting shadowing with one PA in one specialty over a longer period of time. Even though on paper it looks great because you have a lot of shadowing hours, I think diversifying where you get those hours from is more advantageous in the long term. Any idea what specialty I want to go into? Not yet. I have interests in a lot of different areas of medicine, women's health, emergency medicine, internal medicine, neurology. So I'm not sure. I think when I do my rotations, I'll have a better idea, but those are just a couple that come to mind. Let's see, you're welcome. So experience as a CNA, or would you recommend working in a hospital or a nursing home? I personally liked working in a nursing home. I don't know what the experience of working in a hospital would have been like. I think for a hospital, you might not foster relationships over the long term with the patients that you're with. And so I think the benefit of working in a nursing home is that you can really foster those one-on-one connections with the patients that you're seeing, because I've saw those patients over the course of a year plus, and they grew to trust me, especially the ones that had dementia and Alzheimer. They're very difficult to manage initially because they're not accustomed to having you around. And so when you can kind of go beyond that and kind of breach them and get a rapport with them that allows them to be comfortable with you, those are really special moments. And I think that there's definite benefits to that as a CNA working in a nursing home. So that's what I can say about that. Do I recommend studying abroad? Yes, I do. I didn't do that, but after high school, I took time off before going into college, despite my parents' wishes. And I went to Germany for a winter, and it was the best decision I ever made. I was 18. I'd never been on a plane before. I didn't know what I was getting into, but it changed who I was for the better, I think. So any opportunity you get to study abroad or get immersed in different cultures, yes, you should do it. So the volunteer experience in Mexico was through an organization called Flying Samaritans, and it was through my university. And we went once a month. It was a Saturday. Once a month we went and provided care to individuals who lacked access to it. And it was an incredible experience. I would look at your university and see if those experiences are available. Otherwise, even if you can do a medical mission trip overseas in the springtime on spring break or in summer when everyone's allowed to travel again, I recommend doing that at least once, because it's so unique and it really makes you a well-rounded future clinician as well, and applicant, but more importantly, clinician. Let's see. How do we work with doctors and nurse practitioners? I don't know what this one's referring to exactly. Dun, dun, dun. So I'm trying to get to as many of these as possible. Do I think genetics is helpful with getting into PA school? Yes, I do, for sure. Not too many PA schools require it, but I took it at an undergraduate level, and I think it'll help me during didactic year, because you need a solid foundation in genetics to grasp a lot of the concepts that are taught during didactic year. So I think, yes, I would recommend taking it if you have the time. Let's see. Sharing which schools you got an interview, which schools you got waitlisted in. So so the schools I got an interview in, Pacific University in Oregon, The school I'm attending now, Charles Drew University, Western University, Marshall B. Ketchum University, SCU in California. I don't remember what the abbreviations stand for. It's evading me in this moment, but that school, and then Samuel Merritt, and I think there's another one in there that I'm missing, and I can't remember. But I only went to Western's, MBKU's, Pacific's, and then Charles Drew. And I got waitlisted at Western. I got waitlisted at MBKU. I got accepted initially to Charles Drew and to Pacific. How'd you go about changing your specialty? And you do get off the wait list, by the way. Some schools are more transparent about the wait lists than other schools, but if you do get waitlisted, don't worry. There's a strong likelihood that you'll get off the wait list. It might be with no time to make a decision, unfortunately. So some schools will get you off the wait list the day before orientation. So if you do get waitlisted, which is more likely than not to happen to the majority of you guys out there, don't get discouraged. Let's see. Do I recommend taking the GRE? I did not take the GRE. The only benefit to taking it, in my opinion, is that it'll allow you to apply to more programs. So if the top program that you want to apply to does require it, then I recommend taking it. Otherwise, you don't need to take it. I had no time. I mean, I could have made time to take it, don't get me wrong, but I just did an assessment and decided that it wasn't worthwhile for me to take the GRE, and so it didn't make a difference for me. But it depends on what type of applicant you are, and if you, you know, for example, have a lower GPA or don't have a lot of experience with patient care, then you might need to take the GRE in order to apply to more programs, because the more programs you apply to, the greater your chances of getting accepted. So you just need to make that assessment and decide what the best decision is for you.
Okay, so we'll take like one or two more questions.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Do I recommend applying late and having more patient care hours, or would it be better to apply early with a minimum number of hours and update the hours later? I recommend seeing if the school's on rolling admissions. So if it's rolling admissions, then the earlier you apply, the better, because they fill up the seats quicker. And if it's non-rolling, like the schools that I applied to, then applying later is better, in my opinion, because you would have more patient care hours, and you also aren't just waiting for an interview that's not going to come until October, because they're not even looking at applications until, you know, fall. So take a look at the schools that you're applying to, see if they're rolling or non-rolling, and then decide from there.
Okay, that sounds good. I think we're gonna end it here.
Okay.
So thank you guys so much for kind of coming on, and thank you guys if you kind of stay tuned for all of the calls and stuff like that. Once again, they're gonna be uploaded on YouTube. So I guess you can, Miss Minkin was, I guess you could kind of put your email and your contact, like your Instagram, in the chat. So if people have further questions, and your YouTube channel too.
Okay.
So I'm gonna launch the poll, and then this is just a general poll. How the smoothness of the call was. I usually do this after every Zoom call.
Hopefully. You guys are welcome. Thank you for sitting and listening to me.
Yep.
You guys are great.
Okay, so I'm gonna end it. So thank you so much for kind of coming on for an hour and just, you know, answering a lot of PA questions. I'm sure a lot of people learned a lot and got a little insight on everything. So yeah, I think we're good right now. Thank you guys so much, and you guys can find these calls later, and you guys are free to leave now. So bye.
Bye guys, have a good one.
You too.